Hi everybody, this is Dave Whipple and you're watching Bushradical. What I wanted to do for you guys today is get this knife comparison done between the Condor Moonshiner and the Condor Hudson Bay. The one thing I really want to do more than anything else is when I review gear, I want to give you insight that I keep looking for in other knife reviews or gear reviews and I don't see. I want to tell you the things that nobody else is telling you. So hopefully if you're interested in these knives, you can make a little better decision which one is right for you. Stay tuned. Okay, so here they are, the Condor Hudson Bay and the Condor Moonshiner. Let's get a couple things out of the way right now. Both of these knives come with a good sheath. I've had the Hudson Bay a long time. The Moonshiner is pretty much new, but the sheath quality is the same. Good quality stuff. I'm not going to get into it. On to the knives. So why is it that I love the Hudson Bay, but I don't really care for the Moonshiner? For starters, the Hudson Bay has a handle that is very simple. When you grab it, you can get up as close to the blade as you want. I mean, you can get right to the edge of the cutting surface. I did take it to a grinder and remove some of this area just to get a little farther up. When I grab this knife, I can rest my thumb right on the handle itself, and that knife fits perfectly in my hand. There's no additional unsharpened swedge on this blade. It's flat on the back, it's sharp on the front. There's just a little bit of handle that sticks out. This knife sits in my hand perfectly. This knife, on the other hand, has tons of extra space. You're a long ways from the blade. When you're actually utilizing this other part of the handle, you're a mile away from the cutting blade. These things aren't all that different in size, believe it or not. This one's like 13 1/4 and this one's like 14 3/4. You're talking an 1.5 inch difference. But this one's got an extra inch of handle it doesn't need. These points should be closer together so it actually grabs your hand like it's supposed to. And it's got an extra 1.5 inches of distance between your hand and the cutting blade. So even though this knife is a bigger knife, the usefulness of this knife is hindered by just extra crap. It's got too much handle. It's got too much space between your hand and the cutting edge. It's got this unsharpened swedge, it's just aesthetic. It's not sharp. It doesn't help the knife do anything you want it to do. It's less area that you can scrape with. You could take this to a grinder, a wet grinder, and grind that down so it's flat like the rest of the blade. Then you could actually use it for scraping at least. So this knife does everything that this knife can do, and it's smaller and it's more compact. You don't have to take your hand and run it up the blade of the knife to get your hand up by the edge of the blade for detail stuff. Let's take a closer look at this. That pretty much says it all. On the Hudson Bay, your hand will sit right here, right up by the edge of the blade. On the Moonshiner, your hand will sit back here, where it's a ways from the end of its own handle, and yet farther still until you get to the blade. That's quite a distance difference. I mean, take a look at where your hand gets to in regard to that handle and in regard to the cutting edge. Say I'm holding this knife where my hand feels natural. Look at all of this unusable real estate. This part of the handle just keeps my hand from getting up where I want it to be. And this unsharpened area it's just useless. It doesn't serve any purpose. Why doesn't this blade come right back to here? That's what I want to know. The Moonshiner is 1.5 inches longer than the Hudson Bay, but it's a solid 1.5 inches more unusable stuff. Where the Hudson Bay is nothing but knife. You got a hand-sized handle and you're right up by the blade and there's nothing sticking out the back. There is nothing about this knife not to love. That's about as good as it gets. I don't like all this material up here, and I don't like all this extra space. I don't like the fact that this handle is built to work with your hand, but it's built for a giant. I mean, this curl back here, yeah, it feels good. Your hand locks up nice and tight against that, but you're a mile away from the front one at the same time. And then when you're up here and that curl in the handle feels good in your hand and locks up good, well, you're 1.5 inches away from the back. So you're never getting the benefit of both of these at the same time. The blade on the Moonshiner is a little bit thinner, about 30 thousandths of an inch thinner than on the Hudson Bay. This blade is a little thicker, a little stouter. This one's a little more athletic. That Hudson Bay blade is just thick and it's solid. This guy, you can kind of feel the shudder in the blade. It feels a little like it's got a little machete DNA in it somewhere. And it feels good. It's athletic. For as big as it is, it's not really a heavy knife. Now, if you line these guys up to where the cutting edge starts on both of them, you realize that there's hardly any difference at all in blade length on these two. Blade length, the actual cutting surface. These blades aren't too far apart. This one just has all this extra area that it doesn't need, and then it's got this extra handle that keeps you away from this cutting surface. I can palm a basketball. I've got a big hand. Whoever this knife was made for has got to have a massive hand for that handle to fit their hand. It's just too big. So there you have it. That's my comparison between the Hudson Bay and the Moonshiner. Not exactly what I wanted to come out here and tell you guys. I wanted to tell you that I love the Hudson Bay and I love the Moonshiner. I wanted to get the Moonshiner because I like the Hudson Bay and I thought I would like the Moonshiner also. I'm not a guy that just orders knives so I can review them. I don't really own a ton of knives. I'm not really a knife collector. When I buy a knife, it's because it's inspiring to me. It's a knife I want to own. It's a knife I want to use. I can see what I would like to do with that knife. And looking at the Moonshiner, I thought I would really like that blade. The reality of it is the design is just driving me mad. I like the style, I like the look. It doesn't even feel bad. As far as like, it's not overly heavy, but the handle's got too much space. And then it's too far away from the cutting edge. And I'm so stinking mad. I can't get happy with this knife. When I'm using this knife, I'm like, I wish it was something else. I wish it was something else. You know what I really wish it was? I wish it was this guy, and I already have this guy. So I don't see what the Moonshiner does that I can't do with this knife, the Hudson Bay, and I don't see how I can fix it. I thought about maybe removing all of this material here, but then I would just end up with more or less a Hudson Bay with a foot-long handle. I love the blade. I like the length. I like the weight. But I don't like the size of the handle. I can't get happy with it. It's too big. It's too sloppy. It's like if you wore a size 13 shoe and you put your foot in a size 15 shoe. It might be comfortable, but it's not right. It's just gonna drive you nuts. And that's my problem with this knife. Now, I love Condor. They make good quality stuff in designs that outdoors enthusiasts like. They're making stuff for their people, and you gotta love them for that. But I don't know who they made this thing for. Andre the Giant? Shaq? I just can't see a situation where I would take this knife out and do anything with it, or take it on a long trip and leave this one at home. This Hudson Bay is close to perfection. It's got no fat. It's got no bells and whistles. It's got nothing that it doesn't need. It's just a lean, mean machine. Well, it's a 200, 300-year-old pattern. People have been using this knife in North America for hundreds of years. There's a reason. It's got the goods, and it doesn't bring a bunch of crap to the party that you don't want there. This one's got the goods too, but it's packaged in like a, oh, have an extra 3 inches of handle, and how about a bunch of steel that's not sharpened? No, thank you. Much as I love Condor, much as I love what they're doing, much as I like the Moonshiner, I gotta call it how I see it. I don't make puff reviews. I make reviews of stuff that I like and I want to use, and if it's nonsense, I just call it the way I see it. If you find big Condor knives appealing and you're interested in these two knives, I hope there was a bunch of useful information in this comparison for you. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Please click on the comments. Let me know what you think. Hit the subscribe button if you like what I'm doing and you haven't done it yet. Remember to subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching Bushradical. Be radical, eh?